Hello fellow fish nerds and happy Water Change Wednesday to you. This week's video is an update for last week's video, which I'll post a link to that right here, which is showing you the progress of my treatment for the Camallanus worms in my tanks in my classroom. This video is going to show you the progress of the fish and the snails and how they're doing after treatment. 1 week later, I treated them with the medicine a week ago, and the water changes, the very large water change, and to show you that progress. Also, on another note, no pun intended, I have not got any emails from you with your version of my theme song, so for now, you'll just have to listen to mine. So, stay tuned.
It's Mr. Science Geek. I hope my tanks don't leak. If it's information that you seek, at my videos take a peek. Be sure to tune in each week. My singing and my jokes really reek. So the first tank we see here is my Panda Guppy tank. As you see, they are all much more lively than they were in my video last week. Swimming around, the babies are pretty happy as well, the fry. I did lose one fish, but I'm not sure if that is due to the Camallanus worm or the treatment or what it was, but I did lose one fish in this tank and one fish in my blonde guppy tank as well. Kind of strange, but as you see, they are getting along quite nicely. They are looking like they want to be fed, because don't guppies always look like that? But quite lively, not sleeping like they were in my video from last week, because the lights were out there, very active. So doing pretty nicely. And the plants are growing still too. Good to see. This tank we see here is my blonde guppy tank, and as you can see, they are also expecting to be fed and swimming around pretty actively. And there's some babies you see in the background. I think I'll get a shot of them later on in this video clip of this tank. They seem to be recovering, and if they would slow down just slow enough so I could get it, you would see that I couldn't find any Camallanus worms sticking out of their rear end. You see the babies here are getting along just fine, so the medication, the worms, did not affect them. After doing the large water change, that Java moss in the background for some reason would just not stay on the bottom, so I'll try and get that back down to the bottom. But yeah, they're doing just fine. All seems to be normal except for my light exposure on my phone, obviously. But doing pretty nicely. Alright, now we see my breeding for profit tank, which is not doing any profit right now, but it's up patience. And you see the snails are still doing just fine. They are hanging out, being snails. Still quite a few of them. Which, like I said before, I'm not really worried about the snails just in and of being snails. Just this, if they died, the huge detriment that would be to the water chemistry quality. But as you see, there's some on the glass, there's some on the logs, there's some on the rocks, there's some on the plants, so they're doing just fine. Obviously the fish are doing fine. Most importantly, the super red bristlenose plecos are doing just fine. Here we get a nice shot of this young, is that a female? I think it's a female. The males are pretty obviously males at this point. They're getting quite a rotund belly on them. They're definitely eating their fair share of their food, and especially the green beans, which we'll see in the next clip. But they're doing fine, and most importantly, and my koi swordtails I noticed last week actually had some babies. I actually finally dropped some fry, but I can't find them very often. They tend to hide in the back behind the filter. There's one of my male bristlenose right there. He's looking pretty nice, and they're starting to show more interest in their little cave, so that's hopefully a good sign. And now we see the feeding frenzy of the French cut green beans. No, these are not French fries. A lot of people think on my Instagram post, which by the way, go follow me now at MrScienceGeek. They always think that these are French fries. No, these are French cut green beans. I drain the can, pour them straight in. They are low sodium, so I don't have to worry about that as much. But you see everybody, you see there's the koi swordtails in the background, lots of guppies eating on everything. The snails are actively feeding on the green beans, and the super red breast nose plecos are most importantly very active. I did notice after doing such a large water change that the super red breast nose plecos were a little bit lethargic and hanging out on the sponge filter and just very listless. But I added a little bit more prime to the water and they seemed to perk right up, and once the water temperature started to come back up slowly, they started to do just fine as well. I was a little worried for a while, but they ended up working out just fine. And here you will see the picture of the Camallanus worms that I removed from some guppies last week. Kind of gross, but they're really small. Like you see, they're very thin, red, about the thickness of a thick hair, I guess, worm, and I put them on a tissue. Sorry I didn't put anything to give you perspective, but hope this does help a little bit. Anyways, hope you found this video entertaining, but mostly informational. Thank you for stopping by and for keeping up with everything. Be sure to check out my link below, my local fish store, to my channel t-shirts, to my follow me on social media at MrScienceGeek on Instagram, my Facebook page, and also email me your submission for your version of my interest one, because I'm sure your version is much better than mine is. I'm positive. So, until next week, stay tuned and stay fishy, people.